Hi class, welcome back. In the first video, you should have learned how to start brainstorming about this synthesis essay and then doing some initial research to see what kind of problems or solutions are in your industry. This video is more about how to write the introduction and how to continue the research so you can figure out what your sources are going to be, what they're about, and how you can implement them into the body paragraphs. So particularly, let's have a look at the introduction PowerPoint. And this can be found in the online course materials in Blackboard on the left side. So particularly, you want to revisit the thesis. So if you remember the last video, we wrote down a couple sample thesi, and we had the single issue or the double issue. Here you have the double issue, and I'm color coding the different parts that you could just plug in as an equation, right? So your industry is in the blue, then the red would be the climate change issues that your industry has, and the pink would be the possible solutions that you want to research and talk about. So for this one, the MLS, the Major League Soccer, exasperates climate change by using non-renewable energy for their stadiums and creating tons of waste on game days. So these are the two issues that I found as I did my primary research, right? Just kind of figuring out what issues are in the field. And then I figured, okay, if those are my issues, then I can possibly solve them by using solar power and going zero waste, right? So going from that, you should revisit your thesis and consider, did I write my thesis yet? And how is this the roadmap for my essay? From there, you need to start locating your actual sources, because the primary research we did was just to see what kind of issues or kinds of solutions are out there already. But we need to delve a little bit deeper, right? So there's a few ways we can do this. Particularly, we can research how these issues can be solved by using the links in the research links folder, or we could also continue on with, maybe there was a site that we had before that has a good lead, and we can find a site that leads us to a better article from there. So particularly what I want to go back to is one of the links that I showed y'all before. Particularly, it was this one right here. So I found this website. Mercedes-Benz Stadium brings sustainability to the forefront of sports. This is about the Atlanta Falcons and Atlanta United Stadium in Atlanta. This is where one of the MLS teams are housed, and this is one of the brand new stadiums that is fully sustainable, uses solar power, and collects rainwater to use in the stadium. So the way that I got here, however, is important. I first got here by looking at one of the past websites that we used before, right? So remember in the last video I showed you this particular website from the Sports Sustainability Journal, which is a nice credible journal, right? It's all about how the MLS, the league that I'm talking about, is one of the most sustainable. It's also from 2018, so it's within the ballpark time, right? 5 years. And so I was reading through this, and of course the MLS, as noted here, was given the honor of being the most sustainable. But what I wanted to look more about was this part here. The Mercedes-Benz Stadium opened in 2017, expansion franchise Atlanta United, is widely recognized as one of the most environmentally sustainable stadiums in the world. So I found that, I clicked on this link that was listed inside of it, and that took me down a path of finding more information about that particular stadium, because what's wonderful about that site is that it tells us a little bit more about how we could use one team's idea to adapt it to other teams, right? So if one team is already doing this in the league, then possibly we could use these ideas to be adapted to other stadiums in the league, right, to become more sustainable. So I read through this one. It didn't really give too much of what I wanted to know about, but it did start telling me that it does collect 10 to 20 inches of rain during unrelenting 24-hour periods. But that's well and all, but I want to look at more of the power, right? So what kind of power? And so I looked up the next best thing. I went and did a Google search, right? So you can see how my research process works. And I looked at, let's see, I Googled just simply Mercedes-Benz Stadium Sustainability MLS, right? And of course you have their official website. They told you a little bit, but not enough. And then I found this wonderful site here at GBD Magazine. Mercedes-Benz Stadium brings stability to the forefront. So I had to click on a couple of these, read through them to see how much I like them, until I finally got to the one that I really liked. Particularly that found another site that I think is really important to look at. And this is the one I'm going to use for one of my sources because it has a lot more detail. It's thorough. It's one of the most thorough ones that notes. Okay, so this is by Rachel Kuhn, and this is from the Global Sports and Design website here. And as I read through this, I had tons of facts given to me. And this was helpful because it later went on to tell us more. How is this place so sustainable? Well, particularly it has a LEED Platinum certification, which is basically a designation saying that it's sustainable in the building materials it uses, how it uses energy, water, the site location, and then it goes further on to say, what does it actually do? Particularly since I want to talk about reasonable power, here's my part. It includes 4,000 solar panels placed not on the rooftop, but as in ticket entryways, parking lots, and then it states here that the panels generate enough energy to power 9 Falcons games or 13 United matches. So that's really important because one of my issues in my essay is how are these stadiums using non-renewable sources? Well, here's one stadium that is changing that game, no pun intended, by using solar energy and being able to power the entire stadium for 13 matches through the use of solar power. So I really wanted to keep this one, and I'm going to use this one for my essay because it's perfect. It's a credible site, right? It's a journal all about global design and sports. It's recent, right? It was just released in 2017, so it's in the 5-year period. Another way you can do research, however, is by looking at the online sources that we have listed in the Blackboard folder, right? So you can go into online course materials and you'll see there's research links, right? So you can click on research links and you should be taken to another part here. So you have the project drawdown, 100 climate solutions. We talked about that before in the semester, and then Google Scholar. So let me talk to you all about how each one of those could work for you. Particularly if you click on Project Drawdown, you'll find that there are various, I think the official number is 100 different kinds of solutions, right? That's not it. Let's see. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So this is the drawdown, right? So if you click on that link, you'll get the table of solutions. It'll take you to this. So this is one of the best sites that I can think of that has 100 different solutions to climate change. And what we could do is we could adapt one of these to what we want to do in our industry, right? So for instance, let's say I wanted to have my teams ride their bikes rather than take planes. Well, I could talk about bicycle infrastructure. Obviously, that's not so realistic. That's not logical. But if we're talking about power, well, concentrated solar power probably a good one to think about. And Drawdown here talks about how can solar power help you, one, take out CO2 from the atmosphere, how much would it cost, and how much would it save in a lifetime. And so I could read deeply into this. This is much more scientific and much more thorough, but of course you can look into it and start thinking about it. What's great about this, you could also read the technical summary, so you can go more in depth about what is really going on with solar power, how much does it cost, and all these kinds of ideas. If this seems a little bit too wordy and too kind of, very specific to what's going on with solar power, you could just start thinking about how could I apply this solution to what I want to do in my industry. Another one that I talked about is food waste and the waste that they create within the MLS games. So instead of using single-use plastics, maybe using bioplastics, in other words, plastics that decompose because they're made from organic materials. I could read through this and then just start thinking about what is the information about bioplastics that are important? Why are bioplastics helpful to my industry, and how can I adapt that, right? Another great one is composting. Right? When we talk about food waste, a lot of the food waste that comes from stadiums, if we put them into landfills, it creates methane gas, which is, as we know, worse than CO2. So as here, composting can range from backyards to industrial scale operations. So yeah, a stadium can definitely use it. It converts organic waste into soil carbon, averting landfill methane emissions in the process. So I could read through this part and learn more about that. And so that takes me to how I found my final article, right? So I'm thinking, okay, I want to reduce food waste. I want to reduce the waste that stadiums create in these games. And so another one you could look at from your links is a site called Google Scholar, right? So in the links, you have Google Scholar also listed there. Well, most like to just go immediately to Google I think it's important to go to Google Scholar first and foremost, right? Because in that sense, you can look at this is a source to find particularly academic papers, academic studies, right? And they're accessible to y'all through the MDC library. All you have to do is log into the MDC library. You can use this simply. And so you'll see this one right here, Achieving Sustainability Beyond Zero Waste, a case study from College Football Stadium. Okay, it's available. It's a PDF. I could read it. Zero waste at Big House, minimizing waste at Michigan State. Also usable, right? But it's a little bit old. This is 2012. And so what I found was this one right here by 2015, so just on the line of 5 years, Towards Zero Waste Composting and Recycling for Sustainable Venue-Based Events. And you'll see that it's available through the National Resources Council, recycles.org. So it's a .org, it's a credible source. And so by clicking on this link, I received the document that I want to talk to y'all about. And so it's 9 pages. It's not as, let's say, verbose as other articles. So I read through it, and it's talking here. You can look at the abstract. When you come in articles like this, you want to look at their abstract first. Read through the abstract and see if it applies to what you're trying to do. While this one is about Arizona State University's baseball stadium, maybe we can use this to apply to soccer stadiums, right, onto a large scale and see what their ideas were. And so here they talk about how stadiums need to, one, start recycling more to help become zero waste, but also use composting, which is the collection of organic material and making it break down for soil use rather than putting it in a landfill and creating methane gas to escape. So I read through this and I found that it was really useful. The study was really thorough. Lots of detail, lots of discussions about how the methods are utilized, right? Not just simply do X, do Y, but how can you do it and what are the variables that go into it? And so this is the other article that I'm going to use for my essay. So this is important because you want to find a nice mix, not just two news articles, not just 2 academic journal articles, but you want to find something that's a good mix. That way you have different audiences, different stakeholders talking about the different solutions you can have for your industry, right? So going back to the, going back to the PowerPoint, right? We're in now the part that we want to move into. We've located our sources, find sources that are credible, current, and detailed. So remember, look at the prompt to see what the criteria is for your sources. Moving on, analyzing your sources, right? So after we find them, we have to read through them, right? So please print them out if possible. If not, try to make some kind of annotations electronically. And you want to think about these certain questions because you'll find that by answering these questions now, you can just basically copy paste them into your essay. You'll have already done most of the legwork. So this is a part where you'd have to write. After reading both sources, answer these questions. Would your audience agree with these solutions? So particularly solar power and going zero waste. Why or why not? You can look back at the audience concern outline you did in the first video, right? That's why I asked you to think about what the concerns are of your industry. Can I adapt these solutions to my industry? Well, the first article that we looked at was a team from the MLS already being sustainable with their stadium. So yes, definitely I could adapt that. And then the second one is an ASU baseball stadium. It's a little bit smaller than the MLS stadiums, but we can still apply it to us, right? So that still functions and we could use those same ideas for what we want. And how is each source beneficial to solving your problem? So you have to think of what are the great parts of these sources? How are they helpful to your industry? And then finally, what are the weaknesses of my sources? It's from a different industry. There's not enough data just yet in this essay. Sample size is too small. Maybe it's just they've only talked to 5 people rather than 10,000. Need more details about the impact of the solution. We don't know how well it takes out carbon emissions. We don't know how much it reduces methane gas, right? So what you should do is look for the most detailed sources so you can find the best work that will help you prove your point and show that your solutions are credible and they're logical. So you need to do this part on your own, write those down. Then we can think about the outline, right? So here's our old friend, the inverted pyramid. Same idea applies here. You got to do the 3 sections, but just start writing it out as you would with the parts that you've been researching. So if you've researched your work enough, you should be able to write the introduction quite easy. Here's how I thought about it, right? My issue is the MLS stadiums are contributing to climate change through their energy sources and waste production. If back at the outline that we did, that's pretty much just right from the thesis I wrote. Then the middle, I would need to write down who are the authors. So Rachel Coons for the first one, and then Troy Hoddle et al. Et al is written there because there's 6 authors, and so in MLA style, you have to put et al if there's more than 2 authors. Put down the name of the article, right? So Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and then over here, same thing, toward zero waste, and then a little bit description. So what are they about, right? Give a little description. So in one sentence, you can knock both of these out, and you got your middle there, right? So the 3 A's, article, author, and argument. What are they about? Then at the very bottom, you got to do your thesis. So particularly, this is just plucked from the thesis that we wrote in the first video. So MLS stadiums can ultimately alleviate their environmental impact on our planet by using natural resources more efficiently and switching to zero waste models. So you'll see that my roadmap is saying that first we're going to talk about resources being used more efficiently and then switching to zero waste models. So I'll be talking about 2 different kinds of solutions for the MLS and their stadiums, right? Now, to see a more fleshed out idea, you can use the sample synthesis essay in the online source materials tab, right? That'll be there for you as well. You can read my whole entire synthesis essay, or you could also use your outline to write the introduction, right? So if you've done the outline, if you've done that legwork, you now can write the introduction quite easy. One thing of caution I would note, right? Please do not simply just copy the style and content of my introduction. That is not writing, that's not independent work, that's plagiarism, and that won't pass this last assignment, right? So make sure that the work is your own, you use your own words, right? Please be careful, don't just copy paste from online sites because we will be checking for plagiarism through 2 different sources. So, all right, work on the introduction, and then I'll see you in the next video to talk about the body paragraphs, which deal with the article analysis and the synthesis parts. Good luck.